Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel. In this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time, and we have a lot of very interesting updates. And first we're going to start with Kherson direction. The Russians continue bombardments the infrastructure and facilities of Ukrainian forces along Ingulets River. As we discussed yesterday, the only possible solution the Ukrainians have to land their forces safely on the Russian bank of the river is to use the rivers that goes from Kherson region under Ukrainian control into Dnieper river, and Ingulets is one of these rivers. There are a lot of villages, a lot of settlements along the river, so that's why the Ukrainians do have possibilities to hide their boats, and when time comes, the Ukrainians make load their boats with equipment, with soldier, and using this Ingulets river, the Ukrainians try to send their infantry and soldiers on the foothold that located along the railways and the railway bridge that located on the south of Pridniprovskaya. So that's why the Russians are focused in this area, trying to destroy the Ukrainians' warehouses, ammo depots, and the boat stations or boat parking places. Now let's move to Krynky. We got also at least 3 interesting geolocations from this area. The Russians continue publishing the videos of bombardments, of heavy bombardments of this village using all types of weapons they have, with multi-launch rocket systems, with Stoss flamethrowers, with guided bombs, with just regular artillery rounds. The main purpose of Russian attacks is to reduce the Ukrainian possibilities, to reduce the Ukrainian manpower, and to pin them down, and not to allow them the Ukrainians to develop further their foothold in Krynky, because the Ukrainians currently are trying to move at least in 2 directions. The first direction is the southwestern direction, and the second direction the Ukrainians try to implement is in direction of the forest. When talking about forest, we got the video from this area of a significant number of Ukrainian forces, Marines from 35th, 36th Brigade, that were captured by the Russians during the clashes inside of this area. So the Ukraine attempts to develop their positions in the forest were repelled by the Russians, and the Ukrainians were defeated and were forced to step back, and also they lost some number of soldiers. So the situation in the forest was stabilized by the Russians, and currently the Ukrainians don't have possibilities to develop their foothold in this direction. But when talking about southwestern direction, the Ukrainians published the video of bombardments and FPV drone strikes against the Russian infantry. So we can say that the Russians can't feel themselves safe in this area. The Ukrainians control the situation, they have FPV drones, and so that's why, as I understand, during the next weeks probably, or at least there are very high chances that the Ukrainians might develop their positions further to the southwest, and there are other chances that the Ukrainians will establish control over this part of Krynky. Why is that? First of all, the Ukrainians are using the same method of landing in this bank of the river as in the vicinity of Ingulets. The main landing area in this part is Tyaginki. So this is the main landing area of the Ukrainian forces, not like landing but loading area, where they load their boats with infantry and munition. And then using the rivers, they are sending their infantry to the village by the name of Krynky. So this is the main road that the Ukrainians use. But if we take a look at this map, we understand that there are possible that the Ukrainians have more possibilities, and they can also use this river, for example, for a landing operation in the southwestern part of Krynky, and this is the reason why the Ukrainians try to develop further. Basically, they just want to improve and to increase their logistic, which will reduce the losses and will allow the Ukrainians to concentrate more forces in this area. So anyway, we're gonna see more intensifying of actions from the Ukrainian side in the vicinity on the line between Kazachia, Lahiri, and Krynky. Furthermore, the Ukrainians published a very interesting video. On this video, we can see how the Ukrainians drone was flying above the village by the name of Avdiivka. On this video, we can see significant number of Russian forces who were unpacking some cargo, some trucks with cargo. They were bringing munition, rounds, and just like supply to buildings, to the local warehouses or to the local bases. The Ukrainians saw everything, and at some point the Ukrainians reconnaissance group sent some coordinates to the Ukrainian artillery forces, and then the Ukrainians start bombing this area with HIMARS. At least the author of this video tells that this is the strike of the HIMARS, but I'm not so sure that this is the strike of HIMARS, maybe something else. But anyway, as a result of those strikes, the Russians lost 2 ammo depots, or maybe 2 bases in this area. The level of losses among the personnel is unknown. Now we are moving to Zaporizhzhia direction. The Ukrainians continue their offensive operation in the north of Verbova. We got 2 more geolocations from this territory. On this video we see how the Russians using artillery strikes were trying to slow down and to stop the Ukrainians, but they were moving further, and as a result of one of those strikes, the Russians managed to destroy the Ukrainian local ammo depot among the tree lines. This is very important video because based on that video I was forced to update the map, and currently the Ukrainians do have some progress on the northern part of Verbova as well, and they will continue further offensive operation. As we discussed yesterday, the main purpose of this attack is to increase the foothold, the Ukrainian, let's say, front line, the Ukrainian attack area that they can use for further offensive operation in direction of the village by the name of Verbova. And so we'll see what the Russians are going to be next, but obviously the clashes in this area will intensify. Now we are moving to Avdiivka direction. We got a lot of very interesting updates from this territory as well. The Russians continue bombardments of the city using FAB 500 and FAB 250. The sources were saying that the Russians started using FAB 3000 in this area, but yet we haven't received even a single geolocated confirmation of usage of this type of weapon. Anyway, the Russians continue bombardments, and the Ukrainians obviously have significant losses. The most interesting updates are coming from the northern part, from the northern flank, from the line between Stepova or Petrovsk and Russian to the Terikon area. As you can see, the main icons are coming from Terikon area, from the southern part. If you remember, yesterday we discussed that Rybar, the military expert, Russian military expert, reported that the Russians managed to establish control over this industrial area, this one, and managed to clear this territory completely. But also, according to Rybar, the Russians managed to establish control at least over this part of fields and this part of residential area as well. But today we got some geolocations from the Russian sources. On this video we see how the Russians FPV drone were bombing this territory with grenades, and we see, according to this geolocation, this territory, at least this part of the residential area, is under complete Ukrainian control. On this video first we see the bombardments with grenades, then the Russian drone, as you can see, missed the target and start withdraw their positions, but the Russian drone was hunted by the Ukrainian drone, and this is very interesting video of clashes in the sky between drones. Obviously in the future we're gonna see more such videos of clashes in the sky with drones, and the Russian drone lost that battle. But how to say lost? Either two drones, either the Russians and the Ukrainians were destroyed as a result of clashes, but the Russians are saying that they managed to destroy the Ukrainian drone that cost around $6,000 with a drone that cost $1,000. So from finance perspective, the Russians won the battle. But the most important is that this residential area is under complete Ukrainian control. Also, we got updates from Stepova, from Berdichi. We got more episodes and more videos of clashes in this area. We see the Ukrainian Bradley that was attacking the Russian forces on the eastern edge of the city, of the village, and after that the Ukrainians were trying to leave this territory, but the Ukrainian Bradley was attacked and destroyed by the Russian FPV drone. This video confirms that the Russians still have their presence in Stepova, that most of the village is in the gray zone. The Ukrainians don't have their long-term positions. Usually they enter this village from Berdichi, but from the other side we see that the Russians still haven't managed to establish long-term defense belt positions in the western part. So the battle currently are taking place exactly in the central and the western part for the total control. Meanwhile, the Russians continue their offensive operation on the south in the vicinity of Terikon. And obviously, these days, the upcoming days, we're going to receive more updates from this territory because, as I understand, this is going to be the main objective of the Russians during the next few days. Furthermore, the Ukrainian sources published the video of the Russian losses during the first phase of offensive operation on the south, on the line between Vodyane, Pesky, Tonenki, Severne. On this video, we see a significant number of Russian armored vehicles that were destroyed, mainly on minefields, mainly just on minefields, and maybe as a result of artillery fire. Lots of armored vehicles were destroyed, but from the other side we see that the Russians managed to achieve some progress and to get the lines right in front of Severne. So the battle for this part of Avdiivka foothold also is going to continue. And that's it for this short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.